Hey everyone, my name is Bernadette Smith. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I still bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data, but there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Millette Granville, speaker and author, pronouns she, her, and founder of SpeakMG Consulting. This week, we'll be speaking about making it right for the Potawatomi, women leading in Africa, sunrise scrambled eggs, and more. Welcome to the show, Millette. Thank you for joining me
Thank you
today.
so much, Bernadette. I am so excited to be here.
And so, folks, Millette hired me to speak at her former company. So I'm glad that I get to have you on the show. Can you tell folks a little bit about your work?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, I am the founder of SpeakMG Consulting, and what we do is we empower our clients to unlock their full potential and create lasting and meaningful change. At SpeakMG, we also deliver expert coaching and consulting, providing the insights, tools, and support needed to help our clients reach their goals with confidence and clarity. And I have spent the last 15 to 20 years working in the space of HR, DEIB, coaching, and other things. So I am excited to be a part of the discussion today.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm delighted to have you. You know what? It's kind of a weird time, right? I mean, it's certainly been weird is kind of
Mhm.
an understatement, let's be honest. In this time of so much uncertainty, my business has definitely been affected by the DEI pullback, in the time of just a lot of anti diversity, equity, and inclusion rhetoric. What is giving you hope these days?
Well, I tell you, what's really giving me hope is and a good example of last weekend, Saturday, actually, over 1,200 protests happened across our country in all 50 states. And what
Mm.
was amazing about that to me is that speakers like Dr. Barber, who spoke at the one here in DC, just really reminded all of us that every single one of our voices count,
Yeah.
and having people speak up in passionate ways and saying to everyone, hands off our bodies, hands off our health care, our social security, and doing it in such a way that sent, I think, a strong message that says, not on our watch. we're,
Yeah.
we're not going to stand by and just let our democracy fall by the wayside, because it's only a democracy if we can keep it. But what else gave me hope is that with all of those beautiful people out there protesting, no violence happened in
Mm.
any of them. No one took the bait of trying to go out and be disruptive in a way that wouldn't help. And
Right.
so that gives me hope. And then one other story that I just want to share that kind of caught me off guard. I was listening to this on television. I think the story was actually highlighted in 60 Minutes. It was an organization called Equity Arc, and what happened is diverse teenagers in high school that played in an orchestra participated in a contest, and they won the contest. And part of the prize was to have the president's band, which is the Marine band and orchestra, to play with them. But because of the new executive orders, the commitment that they made, they did not upheld. But
Mm.
what gave me hope is that the retired members of the Marine Corps band stepped up and played with those students and showed them that, we are still committed to you. We're committed to our commitment to you. And the last thing that came out of that was the governor of Chicago invited those diverse students to come to Chicago and play with the Chicago Orchestra. So what
Mm,
it tells me is that people are finding ways to stay committed,
mm-hmm.
and that
Absolutely.
gives me hope.
So much hope. Yeah, you may have read that story in a previous five things, actually, because I shared about it. It is so inspiring, how one, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of the performers just had to back out because it was the law, right? Or their new policy. But the folks that jumped in, I mean, they're heroes. And those youth are never going to forget it. Absolutely never going to forget
Absolutely.
it. And that's sort of, let's segue into this week's topic, which is about visibility. I originally wrote this right before Transgender Day of Visibility, which is meaningful to me. I have a family member who's trans, and I feel very much committed to them, to all of my trans friends and family members, and I just feel like it is so hard for them to be visible right now, and yet their visibility is needed, and our visibility is needed. We need to share our stories. We need to keep showing up, because it is easier to hate people that we don't see. It is easier to
Right.
hate people whose stories we haven't heard. So yeah, that's what's been on my mind.
Yes, and I echo everything that you just said because I too have a family member that actually just came out as trans this year. And it was really important for me to make sure that we showed Matt all of the encouragement and support because I'm also from Alabama, and my family member lives in Alabama, a state that has made it, painfully clear that they are not very supportive of the trans communities. And so I think these types of celebrations are critically important, especially now, since people are so easily able to try and dismiss, like you said, what they don't know or understand. And so it's important for people in our line of work to try and make sure that people have as much information, as much support as possible, because it's important for everyone to be seen, valued, and to be heard.
Absolutely, I agree. Well, we all need to keep making sure our voices are heard, right? And that we are visible, because it is so easy to hide now. I mean, I think it's easy to hide because we're under attack. I think it's easy to hide because we're afraid. There's so many reasons, because it's just depressing. It's
Yes,
depressing. And, but we have to stay visible, and we have to keep showing up.
absolutely.
All right, well, let's move into this week's good vibes. The first story this week is a victory for indigenous sovereignty, where the Prairie Band here in Illinois, Potawatomi Nation, has reclaimed 1,500 acres of ancestral land. So this land was guaranteed to Chief Chabonet in 1829 treaty, but wrongfully sold during his absence. So after 175 years, this land has been transferred back to the Potawatomi Nation.
Wow. This one is close to home because I'm also Native American as well.
Mm.
And I just was elated in reading this because not only was a lot of land taken and stolen from the indigenous people, my ancestors as well, uh, it was so heartening to see that the governor, and by the way, the governor of Chicago is a standard barrier for what real leadership looks like.
Yeah, the
And
governor of
doing
Illinois, J.B. Pritzker. Yeah,
yes, Illinois. Yes, I'm sorry. It just the things that he is doing is so profound, and so many of my Native American brothers and sisters, were impacted all across the country with not only their land being stolen, but the kinds of abuse that happen to Native American people, especially those who remain on on the reservation.
Yeah.
And so it is so important to highlight these stories so that others can say, wait, if they can do it here, we can do it as well. Because there is so much land that was taken from the Native American people. And I hate that because of that, um, some of this land was turned into commercial real estate and all of that. So in some cases, they're not going to be able to get it back in its original form. But
Sure.
as many of these stories as we can continue to see, I think the better it's going to be in the long run for the Native American community, because they are truly the indigenous people. And the fact that they had their inheritance stolen from them and had to endure so much affliction, it's their time. It's
Yeah.
time for us to get that land back. And it's not just enough to acknowledge that the land was taken,
Yeah.
because you have a lot of people that fell into that. And I had to share with someone, don't say that just to be saying it, but say it and then say what you have done or what you will do to support them getting their land back.
You got to
Because
repair
I'm
the
sure
harm.
you realize that people were, opening up their conversations, talking about the land that they are inhabiting. And yes, it's great that people recognize that, but it's even more important when the recognition is followed up by action.
Yeah, we absolutely have to repair that harm. And that is, which is the whole point of reparations, actually, right? So, I mean, this is a
Exactly.
very small form of reparations, but there certainly needs to be a lot more, because of all the systemic oppression of all different types of folks. All right, well, the second story this week comes from Namibia, where Netembo Nandi Ndaitwah just made history as Namibia's first female president and only the second woman ever directly elected to lead an African nation, beating the US, by the way. So she was elected with 58% of the vote and is a lifelong activist, now leading one of the world's most unequal countries where 70% of farmland is owned by just 1.8% of the population, most of whom are white. So she has a lot of work ahead of her, especially because about the glass cliff phenomenon, where women get promoted and then they have a higher standard of success.
Absolutely. And the thing that I was excited about in seeing this story is the first woman to hold the president's role in Africa was President Sirleaf.
Mm.
And what a quick story about that. When I worked with Wachovia, President Sirleaf's son worked with us in Wachovia in investment banking. And we had the opportunity to bring her to Charlotte to one of the women's conference and have her as a keynote speaker. And she was a powerhouse, and so was her son. But it was really great because I think she set the tone and the bar high,
Mm-hmm.
so that there could be other women that follow up behind her. Because to your point, this new president has a lot of work in front of her, because there is still so much imbalance of power
Yeah.
in Africa right now. And having the privilege to lead half of my team in Cape Town in my last position, I really got a chance to spend a lot of time in South Africa, and
Mm.
just looking at even the education imbalance. You can
Mm.
see why so many women coming into those leadership roles have the ceilings so low, because
Mm.
they can't, it's hard to navigate through some of that. So I'm excited that they have her coming in with new ideas and what I'm sure will be new and bold policies to help change some of the current day situations, and have a better and brighter outlook on where they want to go in the future.
I sure hope so. Well, and when that happens, I'll make sure to talk about it on Five Things.
Yes.
All right, the third story this week comes from the NCAA women's champions, the Yukon Huskies, where basketball player Yana El Elfi was fasting for Ramadan during the tournament, but her teammates modeled interfaith allyship. So during Ramadan, Muslims observe a fast from sunrise to sundown, and Paige Beckers, was waking up before dawn to bring breakfast and cook meals for Yana. Other players joined as well, and it was really cool to have her identity acknowledged, her humanity acknowledged, and it's more fun for everyone. And they won.
As you can see, I'm smiling because this story just brings out why belonging is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only is it important to us as individuals, but the fact that someone stepped up to do the breakfast and then others decided to join her. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot imagine how much she was playing her heart out for that team,
Mm-hmm.
and they were playing their hearts out because they were coming together as one. And even though they may have had different religions and etc., they found value in being truly a team support system for someone on their team. Where if you've worked with people who are Muslim who observe Ramadan, you know that it can be challenging going through, I
Yeah.
mean, physically challenging. And
Mm-hmm.
it says so much about that team. And I hope that their examples of belonging and their examples of inclusion is going to permeate throughout the March Madness and all the teams, because it really is super important for individuals to take a few minutes to understand, which
Yeah.
obviously they did
Mm-hmm.
because they knew what was, involved with Ramadan. And I know I personally had one of my directors in one of my previous roles who also was Muslim and practiced and observed Ramadan. And it was interesting. I gave up like the VP office space, and some people came up. They were like, "Well, why is that person in the VP office and you're over here?" I said, I don't care where I sit, but my team member has to have a comfortable place to
Mm-hmm.
pray throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that office space is bigger and it can accommodate. And that is what's important to me, to make sure that he had the support that he needed and that he had the space that he needed. And so I love this story because it says that I see you, I value what you're going through. I may not even be the same within the same religion as you, but I value you as a team member. And therefore, I'm going to do something about it. Like Michelle Obama said, do something. And
That's
they
right.
did something. So that
And they
story
won.
just, yes.
And they
And
won.
that's because they had probably the best team morale out of
Yep.
any of the players, the teams that they were playing.
I'm
That's what
sure.
belonging can do for you.
Exactly, exactly. All right, well, the fourth story this week comes from Delta Airlines, which is America's most profitable airline that shared $1.4 billion in 2024 with its employees. So, this is an industry with lots of burnout, lots of strikes, but Delta has really shown a different way of doing things. Only pilots are unionized, which is really unheard of in the airline
Amazing.
industry. And in addition to this profit sharing program, there's a company wide cross functional board council, direct leadership access, and perks like boarding pay and spa like lounges for employees. So, big shout out to Delta for showing how to do things right,
Yes.
even without unions.
Exactly. And I think what Delta has done with this is also just reiterated the importance of what their greatest asset is, which is
Yep,
their team members.
that's right.
And I love that they are doing the profit sharing, but I also love that they have a rotational spot on that board. It's a non-voting seat, but what I like about that is that they are ensuring that the voice of the employee is present in the
Mhm.
board meetings. And that is priceless, because when employees feel like they are being heard, they're being seen, they're being rewarded for their hard work, that becomes extremely important to retaining and attracting talent.
That's right.
And to have only the pilots be unionized is kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
And so I believe that the investment that they're taking, and I also love that they do their bonuses at the Valentine Bash, because
Right.
they're taking the time to show love across the board, in financial, but also the recognition that the CEO was doing. And it just shows you that when that accident happened, where the plane flipped upside down,
Mhm.
it showed that they immediately, yes, it was tragic, but they decided to give every single person, not just the individuals that had to be hospitalized, but every single person $30,000.
Mm.
But the best part of that was the acknowledgement that they showed to their team,
Mhm.
because they got every single person out of that plane and taken care of immediately. And I think that says something about the level of commitment that the Delta employees have to be able
Yeah,
to ensure that their customers were being well taken care of. And
I
I love
agree.
what they're doing. I hope it becomes best practice.
I sure do. I'm not sure if that ringing is on your end or mine. Um, Okay, the fifth story this week comes from the state of New Jersey, which is now offering voluntary disability notations on driver's licenses to reduce miscommunication between enforcement and individuals with autism, hearing loss, or communication impairments. So, this is a new Code 5 designation which alerts officers that a different approach may be needed, especially during stressful moments like traffic stops. So there are a handful of other states which offer similar identifiers, including Arkansas and New York. It's really helpful.
Yes, there's actually 12 states that offer something similar. And this story really brought back something that I saw a while ago, but I'm not sure if you were familiar with the actress Holly Robinson Pete.
Hmm.
Her son is has autism, and in one of their shows, they have two sons, and they had police officers come and do kind of a mock live drill
Mm,
with their sons, because they wanted them to understand what it was going to be, what it may be like if
mm,
they got pulled over.
oof,
And they really it was really realistic, to the point where their son that had autism was, I think, very much taken aback. And so
sure.
what I love about this is that not only because their son is pretty high functioning, and so wants to live on his own, etc. And so what I love about this is that it's on their license, and they give them a pink card,
Hmm.
which can tell the officer, even before they ask them to do anything, can tell them that they've got to operate differently. And to me, this is what will help save lives. It
Because
will
when you think of
save traumatic experience
yes,
and what could easily turn into PTSD. And so I think every state should be required to do this, because it's really important. You only have a few seconds that's going to determine whether or not you make it home that day from that stop, or you don't.
that's
And
right.
when you happen to be diverse, that time is even shorter. And
Yeah,
so being able as a parent to hand off and be able to have this, they can hand off to the officer immediately, so important.
yeah. Because when you think about the intersectionality, especially if someone is Black and autistic, right? That and the unconscious bias that goes along with that, there's so much less time for them to really be able to express themselves and avoid the potential threat.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the card is so great. Okay, cool. Well, let's move into this week's good vibes to go. So I'll share my good vibe to go, and then I'll invite you to share yours. So this is coming a little late, but the Trans Rights Readathon was a couple weeks ago, and they say we are calling on the reader community to read and uplift books written by and/or featuring trans, non-binary, two-spirit, and gender non-conforming authors and characters. So I will share the resources in the show notes so you can find some of those books and expand your knowledge. All right, Millette, what is your good vibe to go?
Well, my good vibe, I think, is really simple, and that is that all of us have the power to impact change. And
Mm,
so, what my charge or call to action is that for all of us to find the place that we want to elevate our voices
mm,
and to make sure that we are doing what we can, what's within our power to help make a change. Because one of my favorite quotes, which is a part of my own personal brand, is be the change you wish to see.
mm.
And so I charge everyone to go and find organizations that you want to contribute to, find communities that you want to invest in. I'm a part of a group that is dedicated to protecting DEI and civil rights. And so we are always looking every week at the orders that are coming down from the White
Mhm,
House, trying to figure out who is needed to help with court cases,
mm.
etc. And so I think it's important for all of us to figure out where we want our voices to matter and then just do it. Just get involved because it's going to take all of us to create the change.
I completely agree. All right, we'll make sure your words of wisdom get in this week's show notes. Millette, how can folks get in touch with you?
Definitely on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. And you can also visit my website, which is speakmg.com, to take a look at some of the services that we offer. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thank you. And folks, if you don't already get the Five Things newsletter, you can subscribe at fivethingsdei.com. Have a great week.
Thank you.